You can't find me. The words cut through Providence Municipal Court like a blade through silk. 19-year-old Marcus Chen stood before Judge Frank Caprio with his arms crossed, chin raised, eyes burning with a defiance that made the bailiffs instinctively straighten in their positions. The courtroom, usually filled with the mundane shuffle of traffic violations and petty disputes, suddenly crackled with electric tension. Every spectator held their breath. The stenographer's fingers hovered motionless above her keyboard. Judge Caprio, a man who had seen everything in his decades on the bench, slowly removed his reading glasses and fixed the young man with a gaze that had made hardened criminals confess their sins. "Excuse me, young man." The judge's voice was quiet, controlled, but it carried the weight of 30 years of judicial authority. Marcus didn't flinch. His Nike sneakers, worn at the edges, planted firmly on the courthouse floor. His faded college sweatshirt hung loose on his thin frame, testament to too many missed meals and too many late nights. "With all due respect, Your Honor, you cannot legally fine me for these violations." "I have proof?" A murmur rippled through the gallery. Court Officer Rodriguez placed his hand on his belt, not threateningly, but prepared. This was unprecedented. Young defendants usually came before Judge Caprio with tearful apologies, hardship stories, pleas for mercy. They didn't challenge his authority. They didn't claim legal immunity. Judge Caprio leaned back in his leather chair, the wood creaking slightly. His eyes, sharp despite his 78 years, studied the young man before him. There was something different here. This wasn't arrogance born of privilege or ignorance born of youth. There was something else in Marcus Chen's eyes. Something that looked like righteous conviction mixed with barely contained desperation. "Mr. Chen," the judge said, glancing at the case file before him, "you stand before this court with 3 parking violations totaling $875 in fines. These tickets were issued on September 15th, October 3rd, and October 27th, all in the same location, all for the same violation, parking in a restricted zone near Rhode Island Hospital. Do you dispute receiving these citations?" "No, Your Honor, I received them. But I dispute their validity." The assistant prosecutor, a young woman named Jennifer Walsh who had graduated law school only 18 months prior, stood up quickly. "Your Honor, the defendant's vehicle was clearly parked in a restricted area. The parking enforcement officers documented everything properly. The photographs are in evidence. This is a straightforward case." Judge Caprio raised his hand gently, silencing her. "I'll hear what Mr. Chen has to say. Young man, you've made a serious claim. You say I cannot fine you. I'm giving you the opportunity to explain yourself. But I warn you, contempt of court is a serious matter." Marcus reached into his worn backpack and pulled out a manila folder, his hand steady despite the enormous gamble he was taking. "Your Honor, on all 3 dates in question, I was inside Rhode Island Hospital donating blood platelets. Each donation takes between 2 and 3 hours. The hospital's donation center has no dedicated parking for donors. The nearest legal parking is 8 blocks away." "That doesn't exempt you from parking laws," Assistant Prosecutor Walsh interjected. "Let him finish," Judge Caprio said. His attention now fully captured, Marcus opened his folder and approached the bench, waiting for permission. Judge Caprio nodded, and the bailiff took the documents, passing them to the judge. "Your Honor, Rhode Island General Law, Title 23, Chapter 12, Section 23-12-32 states that municipal parking restrictions cannot be enforced against individuals engaged in emergency medical services or life-saving medical procedures when no reasonable alternative parking exists." Judge Caprio's eyebrows rose slightly. He began reading the documents. "The courtroom was so quiet that the hum of the air conditioning became audible," Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. "That statute was passed in 1998 after a dialysis patient died, because potential donors couldn't access the treatment center due to parking enforcement. The law specifically mentions blood donation centers. I have documentation from Rhode Island Hospital confirming my donations on all 3 dates, with timestamps showing I was inside during the entire period the violations were issued." The judge read slowly, carefully, his finger tracing the legal text. Minutes passed. The assistant prosecutor frantically scrolled through her tablet, searching for the statute Marcus had cited. Her face gradually paled as she found it. "Your Honor," she said weakly, "I need to request a brief recess to review this statute." "Denied," Judge Caprio said without looking up. "You should have reviewed the relevant laws before bringing charges." His tone wasn't harsh, but it was pointed. He continued reading Marcus's documentation, official letters from the hospital's blood donation center, time-stamped entry and exit records, even photographs Marcus had taken showing the absence of nearby legal parking. Finally, Judge Caprio looked up. His expression had completely changed. The stern judicial mask had softened into something else. Something that looked almost like admiration mixed with profound sadness. "Mr. Chen, how many times have you donated platelets?" 47 times in the past 3 years, Your Honor." "And you knew about this statute before you received these tickets?" Marcus hesitated, then shook his head. "No, Your Honor, I found it after the 3rd ticket. I couldn't afford to pay. I was going to have to stop donating. So I spent 3 days in the law library researching. I found 6 cases in Rhode Island and Massachusetts where this statute was successfully used as a defense, but none had made it to wider attention." Judge Caprio set down the papers and removed his glasses again, rubbing the bridge of his nose. When he spoke, his voice carried an emotion that made several people in the gallery lean forward. "Mr. Chen, in 30 years on this bench, I have seen thousands of cases. I've heard every excuse, every justification, every plea, but I have never had someone stand before me, cite a statute I myself wasn't familiar with, and be absolutely correct in its application." He paused. "Why didn't you lead with this? Why say you can't find me in that manner?" For the first time, Marcus's composure cracked slightly. His voice dropped. "Because I'm tired, Your Honor. I'm tired of being punished for trying to do something good. My mother died 4 years ago from leukemia. She needed platelet transfusions 3 times a week toward the end. Strangers kept her alive for an extra 8 months through their donations. 8 months I got to say goodbye, to tell her I loved her, to be her son." His voice caught. "I'd donate in her memory. And I was going to have to stop because I couldn't afford $875 to park while saving someone else's mother." The courtroom was absolutely silent. Judge Caprio's eyes had grown wet, something court regulars had rarely witnessed. Assistant Prosecutor Walsh was no longer looking at her tablet. She was wiping her own eyes. Judge Caprio cleared his throat. "Mr. Chen, based on the statute you've cited and the documentation you've provided, this court finds that the parking restrictions were invalidly applied in your case. All 3 violations are dismissed. All fines are vacated." He paused. "But I want to say something more. What you did, researching the law, standing up for yourself, that took courage. But what you've been doing for 3 years, donating platelets 47 times in your mother's memory, that's heroism. This court thanks you for your service to this community." Marcus's shoulders sagged with relief. For a moment, it looked like he might collapse, but Judge Caprio wasn't finished. "Bailiff, get the hospital administrator on the phone. I want them in my chambers within the hour. If they don't have parking for donors, that changes today. Miss Walsh, I want a memo sent to every parking enforcement officer in this city about this statute. And I want signage posted around every blood donation center making donors aware of their rights." He looked back at Marcus. "Young man, you challenged me today. You were right to do so. Justice doesn't function when people are afraid to speak truth to power." Case dismissed. As Marcus turned to leave, Judge Caprio called out one more time. "Mr. Chen, don't stop donating." Marcus looked back, and for the first time he smiled. "I won't, Your Honor, I promise." The courtroom erupted in applause, something strictly against protocol, but which Judge Caprio allowed for a full 30 seconds before gaveling for order. As Marcus walked out of the courthouse into the Providence afternoon, his phone began buzzing with messages. The court had live-streaming cameras, and the video was already going viral. By that evening, Rhode Island Hospital had announced free designated parking for all blood and platelet donors. By the end of the week, 3 other hospitals in the state had followed suit. Within a month, Marcus's case had sparked a nationwide conversation about removing barriers to blood donation. But Marcus Chen never sought attention. He just kept showing up every 2 weeks, rolling up his sleeve and giving what he could. Because some challenges are worth taking. Some fights are worth fighting. And sometimes, standing before a judge and saying, "You can't find me," is the most powerful way to say, "You can't stop me from doing what's right." Judge Caprio kept the case file on his desk for the rest of his career. A reminder that justice isn't just about following the law. It's about having the courage to question it when it stands in the way of human compassion.